What's going on, Imperials? Ash Ketchum is the Pokemon trainer we all wanted to be, and then we realized that we had already reached a level higher than he could ever hope for. But we've been able to follow his journey in its entirety. We've seen him lose, win, lose, get handed badges, and lose in all sorts of situations. But one thing that's ever the same, Ash always fills out his team with a variety of Pokemon that are exclusive to the region. Some of them are just okay, but many of them are quite quality Pokemon that any trainer would long to have. So, here are the top 6 best Pokemon owned by Ash Ketchum. Number 6. Charizard. Charmander was a great addition to Ash's original team, giving him control of all the Kanto starters. But this was the only one to evolve and became a Charizard. But that's when the trouble started. Once it became a Charizard, it became unruly and refused to listen to Ash, causing him to outright lose the Kanto League. This lasted for far too long, but eventually, after enough time, Charizard grew to respect Ash and actually started listening to him. Just in time for him to leave. That was quite a shame, but that was not the last that we've seen of Charizard, unlike many of Ash's other Pokemon that he dumps on Professor Oak. Charizard has come back on numerous occasions, usually when Ash needs a heavy hitter. Most notably were the times that Charizard single-handedly fought off Entei, and when it beat Articuno during the Battle Frontier. Charizard began as trebled, which lowered it a bit on the list, but that can't outweigh how it has shown since then. It's just too bad that we never did get to see it Mega Evolve in Kalos. Number 5. Donphan. Ash first received this Pokemon as an egg. It then soon hatched into the adorable Phanpy. This Pokemon may not have been the strongest in the Johto stable, but just look at it. And truthfully, it was more useful in battle than one would think. But since Phanpy was acquired late into Johto, it didn't have a lot of time before Ash departed for Hoenn. But then something happened that has never really been done before or since. After an extended period away, Ash decided to bring this pint-sized pachyderm back onto his team full-time. Oh, many Pokemon have returned for important battles, but then they were sent back just as quickly. Phanpy seems to be the only one to have been sent to Professor Oak's lab that was ever brought back full-time. If that's not special, I don't know what is. And then, almost as a reward for the faith put in him, Phanpy evolved into Donphan. Who didn't want a Donphan as soon as they saw it in the opening of the first ever Pokemon movie? If you say otherwise, you're lying. But Donphan became a pretty big powerhouse during the Battle Frontier run, truly shining against Lucy's Seviper. Despite the growth in power, Donphan's personality was not negatively impacted or lost, keeping this Pokemon as a fun one to watch. I'm so glad that they brought this Pokemon back and continued its story, as it has become one of my favorites, and truthfully, I'm still holding out hope that they might bring it back once again. Number 4. Snorlax. During the Orange Islands, we still had a sliver of hope that Ash might actually catch them all. So it was quite exciting when he caught our rotund friend Snorlax. Like any good Snorlax, this one loved to eat and to sleep. And on top of being a literal heavyweight, Snorlax has been a powerhouse in Ash's stable ever since. Snorlax may not have had a lot of actual travel time with Ash, but he seems to be one of the ones that is brought back the most. If there's a particularly tricky gym or a hard league battle, odds are that you might see an appearance by Snorlax, which I can't fault him for. If I had a brick wall that could hit like a truck, I'd probably use it too. Snorlax may be a lazy blob, but it takes battling quite seriously, respecting Ash enough to listen, even though it clearly doesn't have to. But once the battle is won, it goes back to being a jolly old creature that just wants to take a nap. Sounds like a winning combination to me. Number 3. Weasel. Ash generally ends up with a balanced team, and that may be due to his propensity for getting multiple starters. But when those aren't available, he has to look for other options. Enter Weasel. Actually, back up. When Weasel first arrived, it was fished up by Dawn, and then, for some reason, she caught it. From the moment this happened, I was against it. She already had a great water type. Now, where was Ash going to find a suitable one? But it seems that the showrunners might have had this in mind, since eventually Dawn traded Weasel for Ash's Apalm. Weasel was always one to enjoy a good battle, so he was much more suited for fighting gyms than competing in contests. Despite never evolving and his moves being pretty low base power, Weasel was quite effective once joining Ash's team. It was useful in numerous gym and league battles, even mastering the counter shield technique to block attacks. I just love the idea that a Pokémon would take battling as seriously as I do, and Weasel is one serious competitor, which just made me appreciate this already cool Pokémon even more. Number 2. Gliscor. When Ash first ran into Gligar, it seemed inexperienced and was often prone to bursts of emotion. But it was also quite a playful spirit. In an attempt to save Ash, Gligar evolved into Gliscor. Compared to the rest of his team, this made Gliscor jump far ahead of the pack in terms of strength, being one of Ash's strongest Pokémon at that point. One thing that I love about Ash's Gliscor specifically is that it retained all of its personality quirks from before. Some Pokémon just become far too serious or completely change who they are upon evolution. But even when Gliscor could now handle opponents with ease, it would still become emotional, or give that mischievous look. Gliscor did depart from Ash's team for a short time to practice mastery over the powerful move Giga Impact, only coming back stronger and more battle-ready than ever. Gliscor was instrumental in the gym battle against Byron by defeating his Bastiodon and winning Ash the Mind Badge. Gliscor was also used to great effect during the Sinnoh Pokémon League. Gliscor, being a lovable, charismatic monster, along with being such a potent battler, was an instant draw, and honestly, probably a huge reason for why I love this Pokémon so much as a whole. Now for some honorable mentions. Ash's Corphish was one crazy crustacean. It was so full of life and a lot stronger than you would expect, but it just missed out since Weasel takes things a bit more seriously. Bulbasaur is always a classic. The first Kanto starter that Ash caught was also one of the ones that he kept the longest, with Bulbasaur sticking around a good ways into Johto. I have to believe that's because Ash knew how reliable it was. Crocodile had a great presence in the Unova region, and I appreciate how it was not immediately caught, but first getting to establish itself as a unique character over the course of their journey. Ash's Noivern had a similar overall story to Gliscor, starting off timid and growing to be more confident upon evolution. But as awesome as Noivern is, Ash already had 2 flying types and another dragon type in Kalos, and people wonder why he lost the league. Ash's Lycanroc is a Pokémon that I very much appreciate, and one of his strongest in the Alola region. It being in the Dusk form takes the best parts from both the midday and the midnight forms, even if it can sometimes have a bit of a temper. I've mentioned Apalm before, and how I appreciate its effortless charisma. And yes, I now know that it is a girl! And I already know that people will complain about Infernape not being on the list, but personally, I don't really care for that Pokémon in general. Yes, Ash's Infernape had a lovely and heartbreaking story, and it was almost enough to make me start liking that Pokémon. Almost. The same could be said of Greninja, except that I would add that I really don't care for the weird hybrid fusion of Ash Greninja. And of course, there's Pikachu. But it's kinda hard to miss someone if they never leave, you know? Number 1. Sceptile. Ash has had way more starters than he ever should, but Hoenn is when they decided to not maintain his monopoly, so it really needed to count, and boy did it ever. Trico was incredibly cool. He was always calm and collected, and then he would just stand there, being too cool for whatever was going on, with that one twig sticking out of his mouth. Oh man, you can't beat that. And then when it evolved into Grovyle, it somehow became even cooler. Learning the awesome move Leaf Blade only made him more formidable in battle. He was used in a number of gym battles, offering the decisive blow to win Ash 2 of his badges personally. After Johto, I wasn't convinced that Ash was even able to fully evolve his Pokémon anymore. But then Sceptile came along and blew us all away. Sceptile was the first starter since Charizard to fully evolve. That was a huge milestone to live up to, but Sceptile definitely followed through. One of the highlights of Sceptile's career came in the Sinnoh League tournament, when Ash went up against Tobias. This mystery man had won every match with only a Darkrai, and when Sceptile went up against this undefeated legendary, he beat it! Sceptile is one of Ash's most powerful and iconic Pokémon, and is a big part of what made me excited when I started watching the Advanced series, and helped me get back into Pokémon full-time. So, those are the top 6 best Pokémon owned by Ash Ketchum. This list was a lot tougher than I anticipated and changed many times. Which of Ash's Pokémon are your favorites? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And we'll see you around next time!